This nibble originally aired on RSBANDB Update, episode 799. Now you see it. Enjoy. So we got a surprise update this week.
Yeah.
Something you and I have championed a lot, and that's interface scaling.
Dude, I was taken aback. I didn't see this one coming at all. But I was so shocked. I really didn't think we'd get anything on a Steam launch week, right? I figured that would be the update. But when you think about it, it made perfect sense. So we had, not too long ago, we had the beta for interface scaling, right?
Yeah.
And I just never thought that would turn around that fast. But it did, and they included font size, which I don't think that was in the original.
No, that wasn't in the original beta.
Yeah, that was different. And so, man, this is a game changer.
On the accessibility front for you.
On the accessibility side. Well, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. I think this is the first time they've ever labeled anything as an accessibility feature.
Yes.
And that actually puts it in another category. Like, this is the first time. So,
accessibility and readability of RuneScape were the exact words.
Yeah. And so this is something you evaluate when you're looking at the accessibility of a game. And you can't evaluate something that they don't really have, right? So, this was really exciting. Like, this is the first accessibility feature. And what makes an accessibility feature different than the other ones is that is something that helps accessibility without interacting in any way with the difficulty of a game. So that's pretty much what we have, right here. But font size is something that is also something that you look at.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, they work together really, really well. Because if you are to turn your font size, like I turned mine all the way up, right? And then I took my magnifier off just to see where we're at. Well, it wasn't.
Is it enough?
It wasn't there. No.
Aww.
But when you put interface scaling with it, I don't need that much of a boost in my interface. I can boost my interface to like 150, 175, 200 range at like real high range.
And then when you combine that with font scaling, is that enough?
Then you can turn everything off. And that is the breakthrough here that I want people to take away. Like, they have made it.
You're able to play the game without an third-party accessibility aid.
Yes.
And one thing that actually comes from this as well, in addition to your accessibility buffs, because, being able to play the game without accessibility aids is a big deal for you. But one of the things that really factors in for me is that I play on an iMac primarily, and it has a 5K display, which upscales itself to what effectively amounts to something like 1440p. And if you look at it, it's just really hard to see the chat, and the interfaces are so small. So I can actually now play full screen on my iMac and have a relatively good experience with that. And I found that for me, 135% works well.
Okay. Nice.
And, while we're on this, and, we're giving this the typical RSBANDB update review, it's not going to be all sunshine and roses, because there are a few niggles with this. At 110%, fonts are just not readable for me.
Okay. So it's still too small?
No, I mean, the fonts become garbled. Yeah, and fuzzy.
That's weird.
I don't know if that's just the Mac client or the way it's set up, but at anywhere between 110 and 130%, the 110 and 120 options just really become rather ugly to read. 200 is really good, but my screen's not big enough for that. As with anything bigger than 200 seems good as well on that.
And I haven't tried anything under 150. So.
Right. And, 135 I think is the sweet spot with that. And I'm actually able to play full screen on the iMac right now. I can show my FPS here. I'm getting 30 FPS, which I think personally is fine for me on RuneScape. I don't do bossing, so I'm fine with that.
That's cool.
As we talked about last week, there's other questions about the Mac platform. We're a lot more stable than we are now, but there's still questions about the Mac in general that I have to answer going forward. But another feature that we have with this is game render scaling, so you can actually control how in-depth your game is going to render. So what you could do if you wanted to is that, if you're just running at 1080p, you could increase the game render scaling up to 200%, and in theory, you'd get better texture quality.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, like, this update really had
you can tune it down and try and squeeze a few extra FPS out of it. Yeah.
So, like, if you're on a toaster or something, you just can't do it. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's one sign of just a really well done update, because not only, like I said, is this the first accessibility feature, but it is so good for everybody, even down to, you're wanting your textures to be richer. I mean, that's a pretty great update. And I just want to kind of like take it back to like what something you're talking about with readability. There's something we call the necessity of the text, right? And so, like, a lot of games, they might have text, they might have subtitles, but you may not really need to read it, because there's voice acting, there's sound cues, there's all kinds of other stuff going on, right? So it's not a necessity.
Yeah.
RuneScape has always kind of been a necessity, right? At least if you wanted to follow the story, you could kind of interact with stuff minimally by just reading, instructions in the boxes. But if you are not using any assistive technology, you're not even reading those boxes. So actually making this interface scaling and the font size scaling, that changed the whole equation on the necessity of the text. Now, it's so much easier to read that it doesn't put an undue burden, which is kind of the bar that you look for.
And one thing that actually this opens up to in the future is that with the font scaling being a separate option, what this tells me is that at some point we're going to get an update that is going to convert more of the fonts to something that's more scalable. Because I don't know if you had a chance to do this, but if you just look at your chat box and you increase the font size of it, that font is really clear compared to the rest of the font that's in game. So what this signifies is that the rendering of the font in the chat box has been changed to a more modern system than what the rest of the game is using. And when the rest of the game moves to this system, the font that you see in the chat boxes will be as clear as everything else. And that's why I'm kind of not ragging on the readability of the fonts outside of the chat box too hard with interface scaling, because I know this is going to change in the future, but it's just something everybody should keep an eye on. You can find full episodes of RSBANDB Update right here on this YouTube channel. If you found this video useful or just enjoyed it, like and subscribe, or leave a comment.